I'm Herminia. The room was bathed in a soft, golden glow from the bedside lamp, and the gentle patter of spring rain against the window created a soothing rhythm. I stood in the doorway of Evan's room, watching him sleep. His chest rose and fell steadily, and his small hand was curled around the stuffed rabbit I'd given him on his first night here. For the first time in 7 long years, the house felt complete. I remembered the day we brought him home. It was an overcast and cool day, with the sky heavy with the promise of spring rain. Evan clutched his small backpack, his eyes wide with curiosity and disbelief as he stared at our brick house on the edge of Lancaster. "This is where you live?" he asked, his voice a mix of wonder and uncertainty. "This," I said, smiling through my tears, "is where we live now." Inside, my husband, Henry, had gone all out. The smallest bedroom had been transformed into a space just for Evan. The walls were painted a soft blue, and the shelves were lined with books and toy cars. A sturdy wooden desk stood under the window, and on the bed was a quilt I'd sewn myself, stitched with tiny stars and ships that reminded me of the stories my daughter, Iris, used to love as a girl. Evan ran from corner to corner, touching everything with excitement. "Is all of this mine?" he asked. "It's yours," Henry said, his voice thick with emotion. "All of it." And then he added, "And the room down the hall, that's where Grandma hides the cookie jar." Evan giggled, and the sound filled the house, chasing away the silence that had lingered for so long. Life settled into a new rhythm. Every morning, I walked Evan to the school bus, and every afternoon I waited at the end of the driveway to wave him home. Evenings were spent cooking together, reading stories by the fireplace, or listening as Evan told us about his day. The new friend he'd made, the math problem he'd solved, the soccer goal he'd scored at recess. Henry, who had always been the quiet, practical one, found himself transformed. He taught Evan how to play chess on the old board that had belonged to his father. On weekends, the two of them drove out to the river with fishing poles and peanut butter sandwiches, returning home muddy, sunburned, and grinning. But it hadn't always been like this. 7 years ago, our lives were turned upside down. Iris, our only daughter, had just graduated from high school. She was brilliant, kind, and full of dreams. College acceptance letters were pinned proudly to the corkboard in her room, and Henry and I spoke often about the bright future ahead of her. But one warm summer evening, everything changed. Iris called us into the living room. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something. I've fallen in love, and I'm getting married." The silence that followed was deafening. Henry blinked, thinking she was joking. "Married? Iris? That's ridiculous. You're 18. You have college ahead of you." "This is real," she said, her chin lifting defiantly. "I love him, and he loves me. We want to be together." I felt my stomach twist. "You're far too young for this. You barely know what you want in life. What about your education? Your plans?" "I don't want to wait," Iris said, her voice breaking slightly. "We've been together for 3 months. He's not from around here. He was just here on business when we met. He's gone home now, but he wants me to come with him." 3 months. Henry repeated, his disbelief turning to anger. "And he hasn't even had the decency to meet us, to ask for our blessing." "That's not how people do things anymore," Iris shot back, her voice rising. "This isn't the 1950s. We love each other. That's all that matters." "No," I said, the words slicing the air. "It's not all that matters. He's a stranger, and you're not going anywhere." Iris's eyes filled with tears. "You're not even listening to me. You don't understand me at all." "We understand more than you think," Henry said. "And we're saying no. You are not leaving." "I'm not asking for your permission," she cried before storming down the hallway and slamming her bedroom door. That night, the house felt colder. Henry and I sat in silence, telling ourselves that by morning she'd calm down. We'd talk like adults. We'd find a way through this. But when I knocked on Iris's door at dawn, ready to apologize and talk things through, the room was empty, the bed unmade, clothes scattered across the floor, and Iris was gone. We called every one of her friends, but none of them had seen her. We drove through town, retraced her usual routes, checked the bus station. Nothing. Finally, we filed a missing person report, but the police shrugged. Iris was 18, they said, legally an adult. If she left on her own, there was nothing they could do. Weeks became months. I stopped sleeping, staring at the phone as if willing it to ring. Henry tried to stay strong, but the cracks showed. The bitterness, the helplessness, the quiet dinners with an empty chair. And then, 2 years later, the phone did ring. It was a detective from New Jersey, his tone formal and apologetic. Iris's name had appeared on the manifest of a commercial flight that had gone down in bad weather. There were no survivors. Personal effects had been recovered. A silver cross her godmother had given her, a gold ring Henry and I had gifted her on her 17th birthday. The detective explained that one of the victims was carrying identification and personal belongings registered to Iris. Though the remains were badly damaged, preliminary DNA testing from a hairbrush found among the wreckage had shown a partial familial match with samples provided by us, enough for the authorities to conclude it was her. What no one knew at the time was that Iris had lost her wallet during a visit to a busy boardwalk 2 weeks earlier. She had never thought much of it. She canceled the few cards inside and moved on, but someone had picked it up. And when that person later boarded the ill-fated flight using Iris's ID, everything changed. The funeral was a blur. I barely remembered it. I remembered the smell of lilies, the rain on the windshield, the feel of Henry's hand gripping mine so tightly it hurt. I remembered thinking I had failed in the most fundamental way a mother could fail. And from that year on, birthdays were no longer celebrated in our home. There were no cakes, no candles, no milestones marked on the calendar. The day Iris was born, once the happiest day of our lives, had become just another day to survive. But then, one autumn night, the phone rang. I was at the top of the stairs, having just turned off the kitchen lights. It was late, too late. Calls after dark always carried a certain weight, a silent alarm that stirred something uneasy deep inside me. I froze for a second before I turned and walked back down the hallway, each ring echoing louder in the quiet house. "Hello," I answered, my voice cautious. What came next was not what I expected. It wasn't a telemarketer or a wrong number. It was a child, a boy's voice, small but deliberate. "Hello, are you Herminia?" My hand tightened around the receiver. "Yes, I am. Who's speaking?" "I'm Leo," the boy said clearly as if rehearsed. "I'm your grandson. Please come get me from the children's home." For a moment, time stopped. The hallway, the ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator. All of it faded beneath the weight of those words. "Grandson," my heart thudded painfully in my chest. "I think you must be mistaken," I managed, my voice trembling. "I don't have a grandson." "This isn't a mistake," the boy insisted. "I'm not lying. I found out about you, about who you are, and I wanted to call. They don't let us use the phone, but I did it anyway. Please come get me. I don't want to stay here." And then the line went dead. I stood there frozen, the dial tone buzzing faintly in my ear. I didn't even remember hanging up. I just stood still, the words replaying over and over until they blurred into one impossible thought. "Grandson, please come get me." Henry appeared at the end of the hall, startled by the ringing phone and the look on my face. "Who is it?" he asked, his voice still thick from sleep. "Our grandson," I whispered, barely believing the words myself. "He said he's our grandson." Henry blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Herminia, we don't have." He knew my full name. I interrupted, my voice rising. He called me by name and his voice, Henry. His voice sounded like Iris's when she was little. The name hung heavy between us. Iris, our only daughter, our miracle, the girl we hadn't seen since the day she walked out of our house. The girl who, according to airline records and a DNA report, had died in a plane crash 7 years ago. Henry moved closer, trying to steady me. "It's probably a cruel joke," he said gently. "There are scams, you know. People prey on grieving families. Maybe someone found your number and thought." "No," I said firmly, shaking my head. "This wasn't a scam. He didn't ask for money. He didn't even say much at all. He just asked me to come get him. The house felt suddenly different, less like a refuge and more like a place haunted by questions. I sank into the armchair by the phone, staring into the dark. If Iris was gone, I thought, how could there be a child? And yet, somewhere deep inside, something I hadn't felt in years stirred awake. A fragile, dangerous hope. A part of me I thought had died with Iris whispered that maybe, just maybe, not everything we lost was gone. Maybe somewhere out there, a piece of my daughter was still alive, waiting to come home. So, on a gray October morning, I packed an overnight bag, kissed Henry goodbye, and boarded a bus heading east. 2 hours later, I stepped off in a small coastal town in Sussex County, Delaware, a place I had never been, but now felt inexplicably drawn to. The County Children's Services Center was a squat brick building that looked more like an elementary school than a group home. My heart pounded as I walked through the front doors and approached the reception desk. "Good morning," I began, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. "I'm here because I believe my grandson might be here. His name is Leo." The receptionist gave me a polite but distant smile and asked me to wait. A few minutes later, a woman in a navy suit, the facility director, appeared and led me into a small office. "I understand why you're here, Mrs. Herminia," the woman said gently. "But without legal documentation, custody papers, guardianship orders, or DNA results, I can't let you see any of the children. It's for their safety." "I understand safety," I replied, my voice breaking. "But please, I'm not here to cause trouble. I think he's my daughter's child. My daughter Iris. She died 7 years ago." The director's expression softened, but her answer did not change. "I'm sorry, that's not enough. We have protocols we must follow. If you can obtain documentation, you're welcome to reapply for a visit. Until then, I'm afraid there's nothing I can do." I left the office with my chest aching. I walked aimlessly through the nearby streets, past weathered row houses and shuttered seafood shops until I found a bench near the water. For the first time in years, tears slipped down my cheeks. Maybe Henry had been right. Maybe the phone call was a mistake, a cruel joke, a coincidence. Maybe Leo didn't exist at all. I was about to stand and head back toward the bus stop when a voice startled me. "Mrs. Herminia." I turned. An elderly man in a worn tweed jacket and flat cap stood a few feet away, holding a small envelope. "Forgive me for intruding," he said. "My name is Arthur Hill. I used to manage the children's home. I couldn't help but overhear while you're here." I blinked, unsure whether to hope or to guard myself. "Yes, I came because of a boy, Leo." The man nodded slowly. "I remember a baby who came to us about 6 years ago. Found alone in an apartment after his caretaker passed away. No documents, no family contact. He was given a placeholder name until we could learn more, but no one ever came." He hesitated, then offered me the envelope. I kept this. I probably shouldn't have, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It was among a stack of abandoned papers left behind by one of the child's caregivers. I think it belonged to your daughter." My hands shook as I unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was Iris's, looping and familiar, a piece of my long, lost child suddenly alive again on the page. "Mom, Dad, I don't even know how to begin. I'm sorry for everything. I met someone, Ethan, and we're going to have a baby. I know I hurt you when I left, but I never stopped thinking about you. I was too ashamed to call. Ethan made mistakes. He's in prison now, but he's promised to change. I want our son to know his grandparents. I want to come home. I want you to meet him." The letter ended there, the final sentence unfinished. The ink trailed off mid-stroke, as if the pen had slipped from her hand, and she had never returned to finish the thought. Arthur's voice was soft. "That's all there was. No one knows what happened after that. She never came back. And the boy, he grew up here." I pressed the letter to my chest, my tears falling freely. Now I knew Iris had wanted to come home. She had wanted us to meet our grandson. Somehow something had stopped her. But one thing was suddenly painfully clear. Iris's story hadn't ended with that plane crash, and neither had ours. The letter had changed everything. It had taken Iris's story from rumor to reality, from tragedy to something far more complicated and far more hopeful. I didn't know what to do with that hope yet, but I knew I couldn't go home without trying. Before we parted ways that afternoon, Mr. Arthur Hill leaned on his cane and spoke quietly. I shouldn't say this, he admitted, glancing back toward the children's home as if the building itself might overhear him. But I still have friends on staff. If you come back tomorrow around 4 o'clock, I might be able to arrange something. It wouldn't be official, you understand? Just a chance for you to see him. My breath caught. You mean meet him? He nodded. Not formally, not inside, but maybe, just maybe, a boy might wander close to the fence by the garden, and maybe his name will be Leo. For the rest of the evening, I barely slept. I read Iris's unfinished letter over and over, tracing her handwriting with trembling fingers. I want our son to know his grandparents. The words were a promise Iris never got to fulfill, and now somehow they had become my mission. The next afternoon, I returned early, sitting on a weathered bench near the back garden of the facility. It was a quiet spot, shielded by a row of overgrown shrubs and a wooden fence that had seen better days. I tried to still my racing heart, but every sound, every footstep, every distant laugh made my chest tighten. Then, just as the clock struck 4, I heard it. A soft, hesitant voice, barely more than a whisper. Grandma, I'm here. My head snapped up. Standing on the other side of the fence was a boy, no older than 6, with dark curls that fell into his eyes and a shy, uncertain smile. His clothes were simple, his sneakers scuffed, but his gaze was bright and searching. For a long moment, neither of us moved. We simply looked at each other, as if trying to memorize every detail. Then I was on my feet, my vision blurring with tears. Leo, I whispered, my voice shaking. Oh, sweetheart, it's you. The boy hesitated only a second before stepping closer to the fence. I knelt down, pressing my hands against the wood as if I could reach through it. I'm here now, I said, my breath hitching. I'm so sorry it took me so long. He tilted his head. Are you really my grandma? The question broke me. Yes, I said through tears. Yes, I am. And I promise you, I'm never going to leave you again. For a while, we just talked about simple things. His favorite games and the stray cat that sometimes wandered into the garden. He told me he liked drawing and that his teacher said he was good at math. I listened to every word like it was a gift, laughing and crying at once. And as I listened, something deep inside me shifted. I didn't need a DNA test. I didn't need legal papers. The bond was already there, invisible, undeniable, and as real as the heartbeat pounding in my chest. This was Iris's child. This was my grandson. When the staff called Leo back inside, he waved to me, reluctant to leave. Will you come back? He asked, his voice small. Every chance I get, I promised. As the boy disappeared into the building, I stayed on the bench, my tears drying in the autumn wind. I felt lighter than I had in years. The emptiness that had lived inside me since the day Iris left wasn't gone. But for the first time, it felt like someone was filling the space. A thread stronger than blood now connected the past to the future, and I knew I would follow it wherever it led. The days after that first meeting passed in a blur. For the first time in years, I had something to look forward to. I returned to the group home every week, always at the same time, always to the same bench by the fence. And every time Leo was there, his shy smile growing bolder, his stories more animated. We talked about everything, the books he liked, the stars we could see above the garden, the mother he barely remembered.